So talk to me about yesterday. What did we learn through the Netflix project?
Yeah, and be descriptive, please, because I missed class yesterday.
Image fluid.
Image fluid. What's image fluid do?
It makes the image that you put into the background stay within the compounds of the background itself, be it a border, be it the container or the body.
So not for background images, though, for images that we put in using the IMG tag, right? Background images, we get our own different styling options, right? And that's all done through the CSS side of it. Not that image fluid isn't CSS, it's a CSS class, but that's an important distinction, right? Of, hey, we worked with two different kinds of images yesterday. The first image we worked with was that tiny little logo. We got to get that up in our nav bar. We got to get that out of the way. But we want to make sure that it's staying in the bounds of the column. So whether that column is really big and the image is too small, or the column is really small and the image is too big and spilling outside of it, by making it be fluid, we're saying, hey, set it in there. That was the first type of image we worked with. The third type of image we worked with, purposely skipping two there, was that background image, right? And we started to see, we put in the background image and it didn't show up at all. Well, that's because background images always show up based off of what height or width the container is that we're putting them inside of. So as soon as we started putting content into that, we made the image show up, but we're like, all right, this is not going to be solely based on content. Let's put a min height in there, so at least the div that we put that background image into will be tall enough to sometimes show the image. Then we learned the joys of, well, there are all different ways of sizing background images. You can make them stretch out. You can make them fit in. There's different aspect ratios. There's all of that kind of stuff, right? So that is what we worked with background size, right? We also learned about that URL tag of how we can put those images into the folder. We have access to them in our IMG tags. We have access to them when we use the URL in our CSS. We kind of got that in there. We got our minimum height in, and we called it a day. That second type of image that I skipped over between 1 and 3 was the icon, right? Which is not really an image. We aren't using an IMG tag. We don't have a JPEG or a SVG or anything like that. But we learned how to pull in Google Fonts to make those material icons show up. And we did it wrong the first way, totally my bad, but then we found the right link tag, we pulled it in, and we were able to get those icons showing up. So that opens us up to having access to an entire icon library without having to go out and download a bunch of icons and include them and worry about scaling and coloring and all of that stuff. By being able to pull in that link tag, we're able to make sure that it is scalable. What else did we learn?
Google Fonts and material icons.
Yep, we touched on that a little bit, right? The scalability of everything. What else?
The pseudo selectors. So
Pseudo selectors.
for yesterday was the hovering.
Yes. What else have we seen pseudo selectors on before yesterday? Anyone remember? Nth child. So sometimes we want to just say, like, we just want to select the third section here or just the first section, right? We can use nth child on that to say, hey, this CSS, when we're targeting the selector, we only want the third section here or the third div or whatever it may be. But those pseudo selectors not only apply to numbers, we can target all different kinds of things. So it may be what we call the state of the selector. So when we hover over this selector, we want these styles to apply to it. Span or any kind of pseudo selector is really helpful. Sometimes it's selecting a particular item of what we're trying to target. Sometimes it's targeting the state of it. And there are all kinds of pseudo selectors out there that really make it easy. And I think Schneider made a good point yesterday of, like, how do I know when I should just add a class to that or just an ID to it, or I shouldn't add anything to it and I should try and target it directly using the HTML elements or the pseudo selectors? And I think that that's a really important point to make, is oftentimes there is no right answer, but there may be several correct answers with one that is preferred. So in other words, if I handed this over to my senior front-end designer at work right now, they would probably throw up in their mouth a little bit and rewrite this in half the lines of code, right? That's because they are a front-end expert. They would look at this and go, no, 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 there's a much more efficient way of writing all of this, right? I kind of sit in the middle. I'm not quite junior. I've got a better idea of, hey, I want this styling to apply to every one of my spans in this section. So let me kind of think more we call it the forest through the trees level, right? Sometimes you're very much in the forest and all you can see is the trees around you. So you're looking at that and you're like, I want this tree and this tree and this tree. So I'm going to put a class on all three of them and apply my styles to it. But oftentimes it's more helpful to be able to see the entire forest through the trees and be able to look at that and say, yes, what I want is to apply it to these three spans, but instead of saying this span and this span and this span, it may be easier to say it is easier to apply it to all of the spans in this particular ID, right? And so that's the way we think about the simplicity of our code often, is identifying out, hey, if I were trying to tell the computer in English what I wanted this to apply to, would it be less verbose to say, apply it to the spans in this ID, or would it be to say, apply it to this and this and this and this and this? And that's how we want to think about our selectors. Is there a more efficient way that we could say, this is what I want the styling to apply to? Bum that Schneider is not here for that, because I think he would have appreciated that answer. Snooze, you lose. What else did we learn yesterday?
We learned, I don't know if anyone else said this yet. We learned about image fluid to make like in the project to have the background picture be flush and then behind the text.
Yes, we did touch on that already, but good reminder. Anything else from yesterday? Did we have any surprises? Did we get any light bulb moments when we did the gridding or the outlining? How are we feeling?
So I know one thing that I did appreciate was creating the file with the images on it and then just having that added on. It never clicked to me to create a file and then just put the images of anything that you want in a file and then have that put into your visual code, so that this way it's easier for you to go back and forth instead of going in and out of the computer to search for the image. So that was like a couple extra steps, honestly, that were removed.
And
So I
that's a
really
very
appreciate that.
important thing, because once we deploy our websites, right? Deploying is the process of taking whatever code we have working on our computers and sending it up to the internet so that other people can view it publicly. When we deploy our code, we need to deploy all the images with it. So if the image is somewhere scattered on your computer, even though it might be showing up in your web browser, it needs to be uploaded as well when you deploy the site. So that is certainly considered best practice of whenever we're referencing an image, we make sure to include it in the folder where all the rest of our code is. So that way, when we do deploy it, we can deploy it all together instead of deploying it and all of our code shows up and all of our CSS show up, but all the images are broken now, right? And that's because, well, we deployed the code, but we didn't necessarily deploy all the images that the code was referencing. And so that's certainly best practice. I'm glad you touched on that. If we didn't do that, Nathan would probably come in next week and have a vendetta against me. Come on, Max. Students are searching for their images all over the place. Nothing's deploying. You'll learn a very famous developer line, well, it works on my computer, implying that, well, when you were testing it and building it, everything worked fine, but then the user got in there and, you know, it didn't deploy right, or there was something configured wrong on their computer, and you're sitting there and looking at this bug report and you're like, oh, works for me. I don't know what their problem is. Bad attitude to take, by the way, on your code. Users and bug reports are very valuable and very important, but as a developer, sometimes it can be frustrating to be like, I know that worked before I sent this off. What could possibly have happened? Anything else? Any concepts that we struggled with yesterday? Anything that we want to re-review?
Thanks, Max. Now I have that Sophie Tucker song stuck in my head.
You are quite welcome. That's the best remix out of all of them. Jordan had a CSS issue yesterday that had he had a body tag in a body tag, and that one of my favorite Sophie Tucker songs is the line is like people seeing people on people on people on people, and I got body on body, and my brain tangented at 8:30 at night, and now, yeah, that's a great song. If you ever need to test a subwoofer, Purple Hat is a great song for that. Okay, are we ready to dive into class today? Okay, so if you are like feeling really far behind and want to catch up in Slack, let me switch over to the live stream channel. This is all of the code that we left off on yesterday. Keep in mind that this is our index.html, and down here is our style.css. If you are like, I was mostly following along, or I didn't follow along yesterday and I want to follow along today, you are welcome to copy this code directly into either a new file or the files you already have, and that will kind of just slingshot you up until the point where my code left off last night. So if you want to use my code as a starting point, you're more than welcome to. The other thing I'm going to do, other than getting hooked on my chair so I can't lean forward, there we go, is I'm going to open up all of my windows. And the reason why I don't do that before class is, one, to give you guys time to do it as well, but two, to recognize that this is a regular part of your routine as a software developer. I actually shut my computer down every night, and I know most developers don't do that, but when I'm done with work, there is something ultra satisfying about being like, I'm shutting down. It's done. It's finished. When I come back in the morning, it will still be there, right? And when I shut down, I have it close all of my windows for me, because when I come in the morning, I don't want to sit down and have 15 windows open and be like, oh, dear God, where did I leave off with all of this, right? And so I personally find, again, this is personal, not something that I'm recommending or something that you need to do, but just worth explaining. I find it more beneficial to start with a clean slate and open just the things that I need as I need them, as opposed to sitting down from yesterday and having 18 tabs still open and all of this stuff scattered around your computer. So I find, especially when I'm working with multiple monitors, that I prefer to start with that clean slate with nothing open. I pop open my code and I go, okay, what else do I need open? So I swipe over to a new desktop here and I go into Chrome and I say, all right, I'm going to go to yesterday's outline. I'll do it from Canvas, because yesterday's outline is the one that has all the mockups broken down and all of that. And it also has our outline. So I come in here, I'm going to go down to my week 5, my day 1. Obviously, when you're programming in the real world, you won't have Canvas, but we're going to just keep working off this outline today. There won't be anything major. Oh, there might be something majorly different on day 2. I will publish that in 1 second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open my div outline here, and I'm going to move that over to the right side of my screen so I can reference that. And then my squared out image is still in my downloads folder. So I'm going to open that from here, and I'm going to move that over to the right part of my screen. and just adjust this so everything's looking good over here. Then I'm going to come back over to my code and I'm going to start a go live. And it opened up in my other desktop. And I'm like, you pain in my butt. I wanted you on the other monitor. So I'm going to grab the tab here and drag it out so it's in its own window. And then let go, grab the top of that window and drag it back over. Nope, I'm going to swipe up and drag it back into my desktop one here. So I'm going to get that positioned the way I want it to. I'm going to get my code kind of set up the way I want. I know I'm going slow on these steps, but it's so important to have your windows set up the way you want and know where they are all at. So I've got my code here. I've got my live code running in the browser here. And then I swipe up. I've got a second virtual desktop here that I got by clicking the plus button over here. I go to desktop 2, I've got my outline here, I've got my end product, what it's supposed to look like over here. And then the last thing I'm throwing at you guys is the live share. That is now in the live stream channel, and you can go ahead and jump into that. Remember, best way to join the live share, file up at the top, down to new window. Once we're in the new window, we go to the live share icon on the left, not the live share down at the bottom, the one on the left. We go to scroll down and click the little join button. If you've got a pop-up in the bottom right that says continue as anonymous, you can hit that. If you've got the URL up here at the top, you are going to go into Slack. You are going to right-click on the link and hit copy link. You are then going to go back to VS Code and paste the link. And then you can go ahead and hit enter on that, and that will pop you right into my live share. And I'm realizing I forgot to set up my day 2 folder. If you guys want to set up day 2, you are more than welcome to. I will fix that later. If I fix it now, it's going to boot you all out of the live share, which I don't want to do. All right, we're going to give you guys a minute to get everything set up here. You should have my live share open. You should have your code open. You should have style and index.html at the ready. You should have your your go live open, your live server open, so you can see your code of where we left off. And then you should also have the outline open if you find that helpful, and the final result of everything that we are building.
Max, I finished my code yesterday.
Yep.
I'm just follow through to see if there's something different you would have done, or to kind of reference everything.
Perfect. When you run into those questions, don't be afraid to ask them or say, hey, I did it this way. Why did you do it that way?
Okay.
All right. Any questions before we roll forward here? Good to go? Okay. So first thing I'm going to do, not dive into my code, I'm going to go back over and I'm going to say, where was I at visually? I got the image in. Yes, I know it's a slightly different image, but you get the idea. Okay, now we've got this row in here and we had our column, column, column. How do I know that? Well, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, hey, this was my section row. And I even got my image background working in my outline. So now I'm going to come down here and I am realizing that in order to have my col, and my col, I need to make sure I have my row. So I'm going to go back over to my code. I'm going to try and find where that row is at. We've got a container fluid We've got our whole nav going on here. Here's the section I want to be in with my headline content, right? And I did put my class row on there. So that just unlocked me to put my columns in as well. So I come down here and I like doing all of my columns first and then doing the rest of it, loading up the content second. So I'm going to do my div class col 5. I close that out and I'm going to say col number 1 in here. And if you guys would like a shortcut, instead of having to type the div every time, if you're feeling really comfortable with that, if you're flying along on the keyboard, you can do a little shortcut. You can type in a period, type in the class name that you would like, and hit enter, and it will automatically generate the div for you with the class name in it. I would not recommend this shortcut if you're still struggling with your opening and closing div tags, if you're still wrestling with indentation. Don't use this shortcut quite yet, but this can be a really quick way to generate out a div with a particular column on it. So I'll show that to you guys one more time as soon as I put column number 2 in here. I'm going to say spacer. And then my last one, we've got our col 5, we got our col 5, we need the col 2 in here last. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a period. I'm going to do my col -2. I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to drop that in there. Now, if you're like, Max, that's really cool. How do you know about all of those shortcuts? That is actually using a shortcut system called Emmet. And Emmet is a really cool way of doing things quickly. So you can even get really fancy here with doing some multiplication. So if you want a UL tag, and inside that UL tag, you want 5 empty LI tags, you can do something by saying UL and then a little arrow that's saying go into the UL, and I want LIs, and I want 5 of them. So if you hit enter on that, it will automatically generate out your UL with 5 LI tags in it. I'm going to send this link in the live stream channel if you're interested in using Emmet more. I will not lie to you. I am not an Emmet power user. I use it very occasionally, but for people who are writing HTML all day long, they love Emmet, and they get to the point where they struggle writing divs out themselves because they rely on Emmet to drop all of those tags in for them. So it's important to still be able to read your HTML and understand it. But this Emmet cheat sheet is a great way of being able to say, I know what I want in my mind. Let me just generate that out really quickly. And so it can be a really helpful tool, but you can also go a little bit overboard with it. So keep that in mind as well. So just sending that out as an option for you guys. If you see me creating div classes without actually typing in the words div class, I am probably using that Emmet shortcut with the period, the class name, and enter, which is generating out the div tag for me, the opening and the closing.
Do you mind also posting that link to the outline?
I already did it.
Oh, thank you.
Can you
You're
put
welcome.
that in the week 5 day 2 outline, Caitlin? And then I'm going to make sure that that's published in Canvas right now.
I already put it there.
Perfect. That is now live in Canvas, so you guys can get to those.
All right, thank you.
So we're
You're
going to get
welcome.
class started the way we normally do here. And then we're going to do something a little different. We're going to get the target in mind. We're going to give you guys a chance to do it, and then I'm going to do it. So instead of just seeing what the right answer is, we're going to kind of do things in reverse here. We're going to see what the end target is. We're going to make sure we understand what we're trying to get to. And then we're going to have you guys do it. And then instead of, you know, asking questions or whatever, I'll show you the correct solution. And then you can ask questions if anything pops up. So a little bit different way of doing class, but I think it will be good. I'm going to come in here and try and figure out, I've got my col 1, I've got my col 2. Hello, where's my col 3?
It's probably in the white area.
Yeah.
Right, by the picture.
Oh, there it is. Okay,
And mine's on there.
thank you. I was like, where did that go? Okay, so we'll fix that in a minute, right? That's just our placeholder. But what we're checking there is not to make sure that the words are just showing up. We're making sure that col 1, based off of where the col 2 looks like it's starting, is approximately that right size, right? And we've got a little space over here, and then our col 3, that's lining up with roughly where we want our little labels to show up there, right? So we've got a lot going on here. We are going to dive into trying to get all of this working. We're going to do the first 2 sections together, only because those are going to require some image work and our new Google fonts that we need to go over and understand. And then we're going to leave this up to you guys to do the next 2 sections, and then we'll do the buttons together. So we're going to...
I have a question, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we still putting the TVMA in call 3?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Why do you ask?
No, I'm like, I'm trying to think of ways to do the code in my head. So I'm like, okay then.
I don't know how we're going to do it, but we are going to do that together. I'm just checking in. I'm hoping we did that where there are 2 ways of doing it. One I will show you guys, and the other one I will struggle through so you guys can learn from.
Okay.
But we'll definitely get to that. And then we're going to do just the first row here, and then set you guys loose to load in all the images. We might do 1 or 2 of the images together. Okay, so let's dive in. The first thing I need is a row, right? Or a div. We don't necessarily need a row because I'm not going to use the grid system in any of this. Now that's kind of not true because this is in a column itself, right? So that column is the grid system. But as we're working down these, because these are not broken up by columns, we don't need to put the class row on all of them. We'll just use a regular div. So I come in here and I go, all right, I would need a div in here, and I want the Netflix logo to show up and the word series. Okay, but my Netflix logo, I go in here, I look at my images, and it's stupidly not in there because I did not share it with you. So if you head over to Slack in the live stream channel, there will be 2 files. In a moment will be 2 files. My monitor stops fighting me. For both the Netflix logo and the top 10 logo that we're going to need in a moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the little download icon on them. If you hover over them, you can go ahead and save them into your downloads folder. Make sure that you grab both of them. And then really, really important here, when you go down to your downloads and you grab that top 10 and go to drag it in, make sure it is going into your IMG folder. You do not want it to be going anywhere else. If you close your IMG folder, you should not see the file Netflix top 10 icon PNG over on the left side here. You have to make sure it's not going into your day 1 folder. Make sure it's going into this IMG folder. If it doesn't, and you're working along and you can't get it to show up, go check your files. Make sure that it's in the right folder. We're going to repeat that process with this Netflix n.png. So we've got that one in there as well. Jennifer, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So am I creating this image file in our desktop C4? Like
the image folder is in the day 1 folder.
She
So
wasn't here today.
yeah, so there's a zip file in the week 5 day 1 outline that will have the image folder in it for you.
Image folder outline.
Yeah, so if you go to week 5 day 1,
Yeah.
that outline, there is something that says images for MaxFlix.
Mm-hmm.
You can click on that. You can hit the little download icon. Go down to your dock, click on the image3.zip. That's going to open the image folder, and then you can drag that into your VS Code. And from there, don't hit open workspace or add to workspace. You want to pick the copy folder option when you drag that in. But if you need help catching up, we can put you in a breakout room with a TA, only because I don't want to slow down class for attendance.
Per break, would that be cool?
You want to go in it now?
Per break?
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. Bobby, go ahead.
Is there another way to download the two little Netflix icons? Because it's for some reason it's not downloading out of Slack.
I can try to put them in the outline, maybe. I don't
You're
know.
uh
That's probably not a thing I can do.
It pops up like it's gonna download, but like there's no progress. It's like a stagnant. little box.
share your screen. Looks like you're not the only one experiencing it, so we should try and get it fixed. Interesting. Try and hit cancel on that. And then try and download it again. Yeah. Okay. Got an idea. Let me see. Okay, so my system settings is going to look a little different than yours because I updated my operating system. But if you go to Apple up at the top and then down to either system settings or system preferences, and then click on privacy and security, which is the third row down on the right. Up one. And then go to files and folders. Keep going down. There you go, files and folders. Slack has access to that. So there goes that idea. Try full disk access and see what's in there. Go up one. And scroll down in that list. Is Slack in there? No,
Nope.
It doesn't need to be. Okay, that's a question for the Google machine. Slack downloads, Mac won't start downloading. Give me a quick thumbs up in Zoom. Is anyone else experiencing that problem? Okay. For now, just so we don't have to burn class and oh, it won't let me do it that way either. Okay. Plan C. Give me one moment.
When I downloaded mine, I was putting it in another file instead of the downloads file, so maybe he has to choose the download file.
But it's not even it's not giving him like an option unless it's on another monitor, Bobby, to choose where to even download it.
It's not showing up on my other screen, so
Yeah, that's what's weird is like it's just hanging up on where it's letting you download it. So just give me a minute.
it did it before too with that zip file from the 12th.
Okay, I'm putting in Slack alternative options for you to download those two files. And that will go through Google Drive, so it should let you get them from there. You can just close out of system preferences and then try either one of those two links. You can just cancel that, yeah.
One of these.
Both of those ones, the Netflix and you can hit the little download icon, and then the other one is going to be the top 10 or the little icon that shows up. And Artrell, if you run into any issues with downloading those, let me know. I would try after class, Bobby and Artrell, try rebooting your computers entirely and then opening Slack again, seeing if that can get you to download it. If not, if you guys can schedule a one-on-one with me, I'm sure there will be other times in class that you'll want to be able to download files from Slack. And that seems to be a somewhat random bug, but one that both of you are experiencing. So let's try and get that fixed if a reboot doesn't fix it for you after class tonight. Okay, we good to go. We got our logos in our VS Code. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we've got the word series showing up. We're also going to put our IMG SRC in there. And remember, we need to put in IMG/. The IMG is the folder name. The slash is saying go inside that folder and to look for something that says netflixn.png. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I come back over to my browser and find my code, and ooh, okay. I got a big Netflix N. I've got the word series showing up, but not quite the way I want it to. And it's not positioned right. I want it to get all the way down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, this ID is my headline content. I'm going to have multiple images inside of this. This top 10 is one image. This N is another. So because of that, I'm not going to just target all image tags inside the headline content. I'm specifically going to go to this IMG and add an ID of Netflix N. And make sure I didn't break my source tag somehow. Let me save that and put it down on the next line. And I can even put my series N on the next line as well. Okay, so now I come over to my Netflix N in my CSS and I say, hey, let's put a height on that of 20 px. Come over to my browser, and now I've got my N looking right. Maybe let's go a little bit bigger. Let's try a 25. Okay. Now I want to work on my word series. So I come over here. I notice that it's got spaces between them and it's in a darker color. So what we can do is say, hey, this ID is going to become our series row. And our series row is going to be in color gray. And let's bump that font weight up to bold. Let's try a dark gray. Let's get moody, shall we? So I come over here, and now I've got my Netflix logo and my word series, but it's not spaced out. Now, there is a CSS property for putting space between every letter, but we're going to get a little hacky here and just put a space between each one of the letters. Not the most ideal way of getting it done, but it accomplishes the job. Caitlin, wipe that smirk off your mouth.
I'm telling Ash.
Sorry, can you go back to your,
Yep, we're going to pause here.
okay, perfect.
I'm going to launch a poll. If you guys are still working on it, don't vote in the poll. If you got it working, go ahead and say yes. If you're still working on it, don't vote. If you are along for the ride and you're understanding everything, go ahead and say no. Bobby, go ahead.
So now on my, like the live, it's just showing like the broken image.
Okay, share your screen. Let's take a look. All right, so you're using the Netflix N, but what folder is the Netflix N in?
Right here, it's in an image folder.
Did you tell your code that it's inside the image folder?
Didn't.
So you need that img/ in the source tag.
Walk me through that real quick.
So in the source tag here, you're telling it it's the Netflix n.png. Right here, you need to put img/,
Oh, okay.
the name of the folder, and then the slash is saying basically go inside that folder.
Okay.
And then save that, and I think that should solve your problem.
Cool.
Good to go.
Thank you.
Max, can you just show us how yours looks? Sorry.
It's still stuck at the top of the screen, but we've got the word series showing up in gray, and we've got our Netflix N showing up.
Thank you.
Got 10 out of 16 votes in. That's telling me that we are still working on this. If anyone has questions, just go ahead and raise your hand or vote in the poll if you've got it working. Okay, I was taking the easy way out. Apparently, there is a relatively easy one called letter spacing that lets you specify the spacing between a letter. So we will do it the non-hacky way and do it right. And there is also one called text transform that will put it all in capitalization for you. So we could even do the word series here and then say text transform uppercase and have it transform it for us. So those are two other CSS properties for you that allow you to do the letter spacing and the text transform. Now, it won't be told on at work tomorrow for what I taught the students.
You're safe for now, Max.
Okay, so we're here and I'm looking at this and I'm like, that still isn't in the right spot. Let's go over back to this. And there's just a big gap here. All we need to do is just go shove it down, right? Just move that down the page. So all we need to do is we've got our series row here. That's the first thing in this column. So all we have to do is come over here and throw a nice big margin top on the top of it. And I come over here and my Netflix series is relatively in the right spot. So I come back over, I look at it. I'm feeling pretty good about that. That looks about right. How we feeling? You have any questions? We feeling like we're understanding the CSS? We feel like we're getting the flow here? All right, we're going to tackle the next section here. We're still in our col 5. We're coming outside our series row, but we're getting lost into the divs, right? So we're going to say end of series row. And then here we're going to say end of col 5 with show details, right? So that's just making it a little bit easier for us to say, all right, we want to come outside of the series row. We still want to be inside of this div with all the show details, and we're going to create a new div, and this ID is going to get a show name. Now we are going to put in Bridgerton. So I come back over and I look at my code, and that is certainly underwhelming. Now we could go in and we could start playing with different font sizes, but I know that there's not going to be any font built into the web browser. There are only about 12 of them that we're allowed to use that's going to look anything as fancy as Bridgerton there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Google Fonts, so fonts.google.com, and we're going to find a font that we like. You can use any font here. Get creative. I'm going to use a specific one called Cabin. So I'm going to do a search for Cabin up here at the top. And Google Fonts does a pretty cool thing. They're going to show you this sentence, which has like a lot of the letters in the alphabet built into it. But up here, we can actually type something and see what it's going to look like. So I can actually type in Bridgerton, and I can see what all the different fonts are going to look like. Now, this obviously isn't going to be an exact match for whatever's on the Netflix site, but I think this one is close enough that I'm going to try and use it. So I'm going to click on Cabin here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to scroll down to this regular 400 section, and that's the one that I want to use. So I'm going to click on the little plus icon here, and then I'm going to click up here on this view selected families. So let me take a step back there because there was a lot of steps. I do a search for Cabin. You can type in Bridgerton if you want, just to see what it's going to look like in the previews down here. Then I'm going to click on the font. I'm going to scroll down to the regular 400, and I'm going to hit the little plus icon here. It turns into a minus icon if you already have it added. Then I'm going to go up to this view selected families, and that's going to have this in it. Has my Cabin font selected. So what I can do now is highlight this whole block. It's actually going to be 3 separate link tags. Those separate link tags are setting us up so that the font can load as efficiently as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and copy those, go over to my HTML, scroll back up and paste them in before my style.css. I am then going to scroll back down and get my show name as my selector and copy this CSS rule into my show name. So when I go take a look at my code, Bridgerton now is in a different font. And to make that more obvious, I can set the font size up to 36px, not big enough, 48px. And now see that that is in a different font. Go inside, go ahead.
It's Exona. So I'm sorry, but I completely lost you when you were
Okay.
trying to.
Let
find
me go through that one more time. So I'm at fonts.google.com.
Yep,
I do a search for the word cabin.
yep,
I go to the cabin font down here.
okay,
I scroll down all the way to this regular 400 option,
Okay.
and I click the little plus icon.
Mm-hmm.
I then go up to this stupid icon up here for view selected families, which is not obvious at all that that's what you need to do.
Okay.
I come down to these 3 link tags and copy them.
Okay.
I go back to my index.html and I paste them above my style.css.
Okay. Style.css above that. Okay.
Then I go back to my Google Fonts and I copy this font family. Then
Okay.
I go over to my CSS and I target my show name, my
Okay.
selector. I type that in. And then inside of that, I put in my font family. I paste that from Google Fonts. And finally, I put my font size on everything.
Thank you. Got it.
Let's do a quick poll there. Make sure I didn't lose everyone because that is a lot of steps. But having Google Fonts in your arsenal really opens up the number of fonts that you can use. And so the reason we have to do that is there's a very small list of what we call web safe fonts. And if you're wondering what it is, you can do a search for web safe fonts and you'll see in W3 Schools, where else, these are the only fonts that you are allowed to use in a website without having to basically install them, right? And the reasoning behind that is licensing and copyright bullshit. There is a ton of legal licensing that has to go in before you can use a font on the internet. And because of that, most of the major web browsers, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, all of that, they only support this short list of fonts. So if you want to use any other font, the problem is those font files get really complicated. Some browsers prefer a font format called TTF. Some prefer OTF. Some prefer a WOF, a WOFF. These are all different font formats, right? These are all different files that tell your computer how to use these different fonts. And so Google, I don't know, 10 years ago said, hey, using different fonts on the web is really hard and licensing is a pain. We should make our own library of fonts and make it easier for developers to use their own fonts. And so any font that you see in Google Fonts, you can go ahead and add that font just like you did any other font, and go ahead and start using that, which is really, really nice and opens you up to a lot of different designs. There are more manual ways of saying, here are the different font files and the different formats for the different browsers and installing that by hand. But a lot like Bootstrap, because you do that so infrequently as a developer, it's something that we kind of show you the shortcut and say, here's an easy way to get fonts into your own website, as opposed to saying, hey, here are all these different font files and installing them and that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go back. And one thing that's been bugging me for a while, I've got document showing up in my tab name. Some of you guys may have already fixed this, but in the title, in that head section, I'm going to go ahead and rename that to Maxflix. That's a good rule of thumb for any portfolio project that you're working on. Don't leave your title tag be the default document. Go ahead and put in whatever site name that is in there. Okay, so I switch back over here. I've got my Bridgerton showing up. Let me see how that looks. Maybe we go let me go even bigger on that. Let me go up to like 56. Okay, that looks good. I can dig that. Maybe we get a little bit fancy here and we do something, I've got to look it up. Text shadow CSS. Text shadow property. That. Okay, it was close. So we say text shadow. Let's do 2px, 2px, and a gray and save that. I'm not sure if this is part of the original design, but if we zoom in there, you see how we get that like gray background on the border of it? It kind of just makes it stand out from the background of the image and makes it a little bit easier to read. You can play with that and make it much bigger, which is going to give it like a design look to it. Or you can also play with this and go for like a black text shadow, which is, I actually like that even more, right? Sometimes you got to play with it a little bit, but I think that that text shadow makes it kind of stand out really nicely. So I'm going to leave that on there. Bobby, go ahead.
Sorry to be the problem child, but I keep having like, hold on one second. So my Netflix and series didn't go down, and now my column 2 is under.
Let's share your screen and let's take a look. Okay, so let me see your code. And I'm gonna request remote. So you've got your div col5, your IMG, your word series. We ended the col5, and now your show name is still supposed to be part of this col5.
Okay.
So we're gonna take this and move that in to your col5, and now you've got your Netflix, you got it showing up, right? The only thing you're missing there is that margin top on the I think we did an ID here. Let me just double check my own code. Yeah, we did an ID here called series row. And then in here, you even have all of that. So you're just missing that ID. So that's pushing it all down and you're good to go.
Thank you again.
No problem. Any other questions? Yeah, sometimes we get our divs between our two columns and we're like, oh, well, the columns are broken. Well, no, it's not the columns broken. It's that we have a div between two columns and the grid system's like, yo, what's going on? That's not a column here. So it takes all of our other columns and shoves it down, right? And so taking that div, making sure our divs are inside our columns to keep it all flowing down the screen is what will fix those other columns going on there. All right. I'm actually going to set you guys loose here. I'm going to have you guys add in your top 10 and your number 2 shows today. I'm going to have you add in this paragraph. And once you've attempted those two, I'm going to have you vote in the poll. If you get stuck, you can look at how I'm doing it in the live share. But I want you guys to attempt this top 10, the number 2 in shows today, and the paragraph underneath it. Remember to use a P tag for your paragraph, and you may want to put this in a span so that you can adjust your font weight on that as well. So go ahead and give that a try. And in the poll, if you're still working on it, don't vote as always. If you got it all working, go ahead and vote. And if you're like completely stuck and you're like, oh my God, please, dear God, let me see the answer. Let me see how he did it. Just go ahead and vote that no, but keep going. So give everyone a minute. You don't need to attempt these buttons down here. We're going to do that together before we go on break. What I want you to focus on here is this top 10. Remember to use your outline over here, right? This div trending and the div content description. That's what I want you to focus on. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to do that. That is this row here and this row here. And I'm going to shut up and let you guys work now. Don't forget to vote in the poll, though. That's how I'm going to know to move forward.
Can you send it again? Sorry. I already voted. I don't know why. Not paying. Apparently,
I can't make the poll pop up again.
I'll
If
just
you go,
thumbs it up
oh, okay, cool.
if that's easier.
Yeah, that's fine. It should take you guys at least like 5 minutes to do. I don't want you guys to rush through it. Think it through, make sure you're creating your divs at the right spot. 2-minute warning. Give you guys 2 more minutes to try it on your own, and then we'll try it all together. All right, we're about a third, and a third. We got a third of the students in who have been able to complete it. We got 6 people in who said they got it. We got 7 people in who said that they got it. Apparently, it was worth those waiting those extra 2 minutes. Okay, so let's review it and see how I would approach that, right? So I come down here and I'm following my outline, right? We've got our div for our show title. We've got our div, I called it show name, but that's all lining up. So I want to make sure this is the div for the end of my col 5 with the show details, right? So I need to be inside of that. I'm going to do my new div, and I'm not going to put an ID on it yet. I don't know if I'm going to need that ID or not. I go back over to my mockup and I've got my image for the top 10 showing up. So I do that first. I say img src equals. I like closing out my tag first before I put in the file path. That's totally optional. I come over here, I go up and I say, hey, it's this Netflix top 10 file. But I can't just put that file name in because it's in the img folder. So I need to say img first, and then look what the autocomplete's doing for me. I could type that file name in by hand, but VS Code's no dummy. It knows that that file exists, right? So I'm going to hit that Netflix top 10 icon.png. I save. I come over to here, and it's huge. Okay, so now I want to use that ID. I'm going to say ID, and I'm going to say trending status. Obviously, you probably called that something else. That's totally fine. And I'm going to target the IMG inside that trending status and say the width on that is going to be, let's say 15px. That's too tiny. Yes. Let's say go up to 20. Nope, 25. All right, I don't hate that. 25 looks decent. And then inside that div, I need to put a span in here that says number 2 in TV shows today. And I'm going to grab my trending status again, target the span, and make the font weight on that bold. Come over here. That's showing up. Now, I hate that white on the white. Maybe that's on me, but I'm going to fix that by taking my text shadow and applying it to my span, except I'll only do 1 and 1 on this. We'll make it a little bit more subtle, but look at what that little text shadow did. That little 1 pixel by 1 pixel change made this so much more readable because we're adding contrast there. We've got our white font, on a black text shadow on a white background is really making that pop out just the tiny little bit we need to make it stand out. Okay, so we got that there. Now, I may not love that top 10. I may want a little space between those two. So I can come in here and add a little padding on the left of this of 5px. And that should, I think, move it over just a little bit. So we've got a little bit more breathing room in there. I'm going to go down to 10 there, right? Those are just the little tweaks of that little white space can really make that design all come together. Obviously not a big deal if you didn't do that, but I feel like I'm respecting the original design here by adding a little bit more space. Now I come down here and I don't actually need a whole nother div because this is just text, right? This is just a paragraph. And one really cool thing in the newer versions of Mac OS is that you can highlight the text of a screenshot and copy it. So even though that this is an image, Mac OS does something called OCR, optical character recognition. That's the technical term for it. The marketing term they call it is called live text. It allows you to copy that text right from the image, go to your code, and paste it right on in there. So I come back over here, I look at my browser, and I've got my text showing up. All right. Now, one thing I'm noticing is I don't like that text being right on top of that number 2 in TV shows today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my headline content, target the P tag on that, and put a margin top of 10px on it. So I've got a little bit more breathing room between here, 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 and here. Pausing there, is that how you guys went about it? There any light bulb moments? Were there anything, do you think that you did it a better way? How are you feeling about the way you approached it versus the way I did it?
It was a similar approach. It's just more of the CSS of it.
Yeah, and those little tweaks are like what gets you there, right? It's like, okay, I felt like I accomplished the assignment, but as a designer, what's standing out at me? What's bothering me? Oh, that white text on the white background is bothering me. What can I do to fix that, right? Just thinking through, whenever we have a background image, it is really, really, really hard to get text to show up on it, right? Especially when we don't control what the background image is going to be. So those little tricks with like text shadow to make it stand out a little bit, good little tips that you learn along the way. All right, I'm feeling like we need a break, but before we go into the break, I want to tackle our buttons because our buttons are a fun thing where we kind of put them in and we get to combine a lot of what we learn because we've got an icon in there, plus we've got text, plus we've got some styling to do on that. So I'm going to do the play button right now. Then we're going to go on break. And when we come back, you're going to attempt that more info button on your own. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say, all right, this needs to go beneath my text. So I come outside my P tag, but still in this end of the column 5, right? That's this closing column div right here. So I'm going to create a new div because I want these buttons side by side. And I'm going to create my first button. And inside that button, I'm going to put the word play. Now I come over here and it's freaking hideous. That's okay. We can clean that up pretty quickly using our CSS. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an ID on here that says play. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to target my button that has a play. Now, because we put an ID on that, we should never have a conflict. That ID shouldn't be used anywhere else, but specificity in CSS is a good thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my background on that to white. I'm going to set my border radius on that to about 5px. That's what's going to give it that nice little rounded. I think it's actually even less than that. Let's go down to 3px. And I'm going to add some padding on that. Now I'm using padding because I want it to push out the button. I want that background to get a little bit bigger. So I come over here and nothing works because the world just hates me. Am I actually impacting? Okay, it is impacting. I just need to play with it a little bit. Was it impacting it here? And I had just made subtle changes? Nope. Okay. Just like last night, we're learning things, right? It does not like the button selector and the ID selector at the same time. So we're going to just fall back to our play selector because we need another selector for the next button that's coming. So I come over here and I'm like, okay, it's kind of getting better, but not really. Let's try and take the border and set it to none. Borders by default come in with that button tag. So we can take that off. And now I'm noticing that the border, the padding up at the top and the bottom is too much, but it's starting to feel right on the sides. So I'm going to break that out and I'm going to say there's padding on the left and padding on the right of 15px, but not on the top. Okay, we're getting there, but there does need to be a little bit of padding on the top. Let's try 5px and padding on the right of 5px. I'm sorry, padding on the bottom. All right, we're getting there. Maybe let's bump our font weight up. And let's take a look. Our play is also supposed to be in black text, which it is here. Maybe I went a little too heavy on the font weight. Let's try 600. All right, we're getting there. Now, one thing is I just wrote this all out, and it's 4 separate lines. It's a lot of CSS. There's actually what they call a shorthand way of writing this. And it starts at the top padding number and works its way around clockwise. So you start with your padding top number, then you do your padding right number, then you do your padding bottom number, and then you do your padding left number. And you can do that all in one line of CSS. So we start, our padding at the top is 5px. Our padding on the right side is going to be 15px. Our padding on the bottom is going to be 5px, and our padding on the left is going to be 15px. If we write that out, we're going to achieve the exact same output without needing 4 different lines of CSS. The important thing here is we remember what those numbers are applying to. We always start at the top padding number and make our way around as if we were going around the box in a clock, right? So we say top, right, bottom, left padding. And that's what allows us to achieve that all in one line. Now, the last thing that we need here is that play icon. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our material icons. We're going to click on that material icons as the first link. We're going to go down to the browsing and downloading and open up the material icon library here. And then we are going to do a search for play. And that's going to get me my play arrow here. Kind of surprised they don't have a filled in version of it, but that's okay. We're going to grab our play arrow. We're going to scroll down to this inserting the icon section, and we're going to copy that span tag. Then we come back over to our play button, and we're going to go ahead and paste that play arrow in and take a look at our code. And now we've got our play arrow there.
This one of those things where you gotta fiddle around with it until you get it right, like no surefire way to get through it.
In terms of the button styling,
Yeah, the button
Yes.
styling.
CSS is all about fiddling, which is why if you go to Giphy and look at CSS, hopefully this Giphy is starting to make a little bit more sense to you. of whenever you try to use blinds and you can't figure out which string is doing the right thing to get the blinds open. That is what CSS is all about, is fiddling around with it until you get it exactly looking the way you want it to. So we've got our play button there. And in the 4 minutes between now and break, you're going to see me fight against my CSS to try and get that play button to line up with the wordplay, because it's going to drive me freaking crazy if it doesn't. So I'm actually going to use the inspect tools here. If you want to just wait and see me see what the right solution is, you can definitely do that. You don't have to follow along with me here. I am hoping that if I put this in its own span tag, I can, let me see actually if I already thought through a solution on this. Play arrow. Okay, so I do on the parent, I decide to flex everything. Buttons.
Would it be like an align or a justify of like those items within that button?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's D inline flex, and we need the inline here because these are both span tags. So because the span tag is considered inline and not block, which is the default of a div, spans are inline, they're not block displayed. So we have to do an inline flex on them. And we want to pull out flexbox whenever we're dealing with that positioning issue, right? Whenever we're like, hey, this button is a certain size, we want it just to be flexible and just appear in the right space. And then we do our align item center, which is basically saying horizontally, these need to be at the same spot with each other. And if I save that, that gets our play button lining up at the right spot. And that is because these are classes here that we're using. These classes are coming from Bootstrap. If you read more into the Bootstrap Flex utilities, you would get a little bit more documentation on what those classes are used for. Or you could get into your Flexbox Froggy knowledge and write the Flexbox code directly in your CSS, and that would also get them aligned and working properly.
All that for a little play button to be centered.
All that it is. We can actually, if we wanted to, we could get really fancy and say play arrow. And then in here, we could do our play arrow and set like a font size of, let's say, 28 px. That makes our play a little bit bigger. Maybe these aren't in bold. Trying to figure out what it is. Let's go down to 500. It's looking a little bit more right. I think it's just our play button and our padding on the right. 20. Obviously, I'm just fiddling around at this point to get it to look as close to it as possible. I think that looks right. And then the only thing is that fill, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that. I don't think that's going to work. No, it's not. So I'll just leave it there. I just made the play arrow a little bit bigger. Close enough. I'm feeling that.
Where did you put the play arrow ID in your HTML?
On the span.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, we are going to go on break. And when we come back, you guys are going to attempt your more info button here on your own based off of what we just did with this play arrow. But go on break. Breaks are important. Don't try and do that now. Go on break, take a breather, be back at 7:25, and we are going to tackle our rating section, get our first image or two in our rows, and then we are actually going to get out of class a little bit early, believe it or not, because we are cruising along here. Go on break. See you guys at 7:25, and I will stick around for anyone that has questions. Jennifer or Karen, did either of you need help catching up? Yes, tonight.
So fast. My family's here. And dinner's happening downstairs, so I had just enough time to like throw all my stuff together. I was like, okay, I have to go again.
I really thought you said break was at 7:30, but that's okay.
There was a time at during last cohort that I was still in the upstate New York housing market and living with my parents, and I know that very quick, like, you don't understand, break is from 7 to 7:25. If dinner is running late, I will not be able to eat. You know, it's like this very, very strict, here are the break times. I've actually tried to push it up to 25 minutes because 20 minutes just is not enough. And really, what am I going to do with that extra 5 minutes? You know, so like, I don't know, in high school, I was scarred for life. We had 20-minute lunch periods, and that was like included getting your food and all of that kind of stuff. So we learned to eat really fast, and that's just not healthy for anyone. So
Not necessary though. Not great. I like to take my time.
all right.
Torture.
What was, sorry, someone say something?
Yeah, I said that sounds like torture. I'd like to enjoy my food.
Yeah, it's really not healthy to ingest food that quickly.
No, it doesn't really digest.
Well, we're actually going to dive in by letting you guys take a chance and make your more info button. So what we're going to do is we want that more info button to show up here, right? So we're going to give everyone just 5 minutes to work on getting their more info button to show up. You want to get the right icon there. And then for your background color, try and use a new property called RGBA. Go ahead and look that RGBA up on W3 Schools and try and play around with it and see if you can figure out how to get that to work. Because if we zoom all the way in on this, you can see that that is not just a specific color gray. It just has a little hint of transparency to it. So pulling that off with RGBA is going to be the right way to approach that. Try and get your info icon showing up, the more text. Try and get your padding and your spacing right, trying to get everything to align properly. But also keep in mind that we've already got our play button looking good. So we can use this as a base to get our more info to show up. So I'm going to launch a quick poll on that. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to attempt that on their own, because remember, we are in week 5 here. This is the last of our HTML. This is our 4th week of HTML. So starting on Thursday, no new HTML concepts coming your way. We're going to move on to DevOps and then to JavaScript, right? So go ahead, take a stab at this, try and get your more info button working. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes and then we'll do it together.
I have a question if you don't mind really quick. Can we put the font? No, never mind.
Those are my favorite kinds of questions, ones I don't need to answer. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was just gonna ask, can we put like the font to bold when it comes to the place, to the buttons? Hold on.
Yes. I think I put it to 500 in my code.
Mm-hmm.
But
we
you
put-
can, you can't do like 550, but you can do 600, 700, 800, 900. Remember to vote in the poll if you've got it working, or if you're kind of just following along with me. You're still working on it. Can just leave that poll open and give you guys a couple more minutes. Votes are trickling in here, but looks like we got 1 or 2 more people still working on it. So we'll give you 1 more minute.
Sorry, I have a question.
You should never apologize for having a question.
Um,
There are stupid questions, but you should never apologize for having a question.
there's no stupid question ever. There's just unknowledgeable questions. So my question is for the why am I drawing a blank? For the div that's the long paragraph, the 8 close-knit siblings. Did you put that as a p tag or what did you use?
I used the p tag, yeah.
Okay, just making sure because mine does not look. Okay, cool. That's it. I'm good.
All right. You got most everyone voted in on the poll here. Before I show you guys the answer, doing attendance the way we did last night was super helpful for us. So we're gonna launch the attendance poll again. Please, 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 everyone make sure that you vote in there. This is a quick way for us to not only see who's in class, but who's also paying attention.
Oh, is my video up?
It is. You're good.
Oops.
And your microphone is too, apparently.
But you knew I was talking.
Yes, you're good. Give everyone just a minute to vote in that attendance poll, and then we will move forward here. Fourteen of 17 of you have voted in for attendance. We'll leave that up for 10 more seconds to give everyone a chance to vote in.
Do you get the names for the attendance or is it
We
just?
do.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, what's the point of that?
All right, thank you guys. It's this is a newer system for us. But what ends up happening is we've got some people who are tuning in but don't have their videos on and are not part of not following along in class. Someone asked for live transcription to be turned on. Was that a mistake? We don't do the live transcription in Zoom because the one that we post with our class notes tends to be a little bit more accurate with Otter. So if you're in the week 5, day 1 outline, obviously it's not on quite yet. But if you go to the link here and pop open the transcript, you can actually see the breakdown of last night's class and the whole transcription of who said what. That's interesting that it thinks someone is my boss. But anyway, all of this is in here. And in this transcript, you can actually click on something and it will automatically start playing it at that audio section. So the transcript feature is in there. If you guys want to use that to review class, you can definitely get to that from the outlines. When I post the videos, I also post the transcripts. And that is also linked to if you go to our Hack Upstate channel. In all the daily videos, when you click into them, the link to the outline and to the transcript is available here for an additional feature if you need it. Artrell, go ahead.
What do we look? What is the RBG again in the W3 schools? RBG?
RGBA is going to let you set your alpha transparency. So let's dive into that right now. So I'm going to go into my code. I'm going to get to the right screen. I'm going to recognize, all right, I want my next button to show up next to my current button. So I'm going to copy everything and paste that in here. And I'm going to change my ID here to my more info. And I'm going to copy everything here and bring it down here and say more info. Now, we could go back to the document, to the material icons library and figure that out. But I know for a fact that they actually have something called info. And then this says more info down here. And this I'm going to change instead of using the ID play arrow. Instead, what I'm going to do is take both of those IDs off because we want our IDs to be unique. And instead, I'm going to say class up here equals, all right, I guess I can do an ID on that. ID equals button row. I come over here, I'm going to target not only my button row, I'm going to target the material symbols outlined in my button row so that I don't need to put two different IDs on that. So I come back over to my live running code. I take a look, and now I've got my play and my more info showing up, but not exactly how I want it, right? I want to do some work on that. So I come down to my more info span. I'm going to add, I'm going to come down to my more info. I'm going to target my span tag, and I'm going to add some margin on the left of that for, I don't know, 10 pixels. Just going to get a little bit more of a gap going on there. And then I want to adjust this down. So top, bottom, I'm sorry, top, right, left. God, Max, my brain is not working. Top, right, bottom, left. So I'm looking at my code here, and there's too much space over here. That's on the left of my padding. So I'm going to adjust this down to 10 pixels and get that spaced out a little bit better. Now, I also am noticing that my text is in white, so I need to fix that. I'm going to say my color here is white. And then I need to fix my background. So I'm going to do an RGBA. And if I do all zeros, I'm going to get a black background. If I want some transparency on that, I can put it at 0.2. 0.2 is 20% transparency. So if I come over here, I can see that black, but it's pretty faint. If I take that all the way up to 0.8, in other words, 80% transparency, or 80% opacity is really more accurate, it's going to be a much darker color. Now, you can fiddle around with that. You don't need to do all black. You can try and make it a little bit gray and fiddle with your transparency until you get it looking the way you want with that transparency going on in the background. So I'm going to leave it at that because I think this looks pretty similar to this. The only difference is this is a darker image, which is why it looks like it's a little further off from the gray that we're going with there. But you can obviously play with this and get it to the way you want. If you wanted to go lighter and do like a very light gray, you can make them all 80, or not very light, but you can play around with that until you get to what you want. I don't think it'll make a difference if I do color. No. Okay. Any questions on that? Actually, that's really bothering me. It's not this quite the color that I want. I wonder if I go darker there and go all the way up to like 190 on these. All right, we don't need to see me fiddle around here until we get the color that I want. You get the idea. Okay, so we're gonna move on here. This is feeling pretty good. I'm gonna go back over. This is looking really good. The only problem that I'm noticing here is there's a little bit more of a gap down here at the bottom. So there are two ways of us fixing that. We could either put a margin bottom on the bottom of our play and more info row, which would shove everything down a little bit more, making that content expand, or we could go all the way back up to our min height that we set on the headline content and bump that up to 600. Okay, that's a little too big. So let's go up to 650, or I'm sorry, 550. And now that gets me a little bit more breathing room on the bottom like I want. There are pros and cons of doing it either way. But this way it tends to be the easier way, right? Of, all right, let me just get a little bit more breathing room down at the bottom. Let's get our image a little bit bigger there. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. I've got my col2 spacer. Let's go back to our overview. Our col2 spacer doesn't have anything in it. The whole point of that is just to push everything over so we can get our little refresh and our TVMA over there. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to take out this col2 spacer, but I'll leave a comment in here that says spacer pushing the rating column to the right spot. So I save that. I come over here. Now my content is gone and I'm working with my col3. So we're going to start with the easier solution on the col3 to push everything down, and that's going to be my margin. So I'm going to come over to my third column, which is a col number 2. I'm going to put an ID on this of rating col. I'm going to go down to the bottom of my CSS. Hopefully this is feeling more rhythmic at this point. I'm going to put a margin top on it of 450 px just to get started. And then the first thing I have is this little refresh button. So I'm going to go to my material symbols. I'm going to do a search for refresh. I get my little arrow here. I'm going to copy that span. I'm going to go to my rating 2 col and I'm going to paste in that refresh. I come back over to my code and now my refresh button shows up. But it's missing our outline for that. We can actually achieve that by saying, hey, go to the rating col, grab the material icons outlined, and do a border on that of 2px solid white, and then put a border radius on that of something huge, let's say 100 pixels. Now we get our little refresh icon and we get a circle around it. But that circle, if we compare it, it's a little too close to where my refresh button is. How could I fix that? How do I get my border further away from the refresh icon? Padding. So anytime that I want space between the content and the border itself, we can throw some padding on that, let's say 10px. Okay, maybe a little too much, 5px. And now we got our refresh icon showing up. Okay, that's all cool. Now the last thing we need is a span tag with our rating, TVMA. In case you haven't noticed, Bridgerton's a little saucy of a TV show, so it gets a mature rating. Okay. Now we look at our TVMA, and we're looking at our styling over here, and we've got some work to do. So I'm going to say this is going to get an ID of our rating. We're going to grab our rating, and we're going to add a background to it of our RGBA, and I'm going to use my black. Let's go black. And let's do a transparency of 0.8, meaning 80%. That gets that in there. Okay, now we need some padding. Let's say 5px. Let's say 20px. I don't know why I'm doing commas. 5px, 20px, and save. That gets us a little bit more of our spacing going on. And I notice over here, there's this nice little white bar that's kind of anchoring it all. I'm going to drop my transparency a little bit there. Let's go 0.6. So I'm going to add a border, but only on the left side of 2px solid white. 2px solid white. Okay, but we're running into that same stupid alignment issue, right? Of the refresh button and the TVMA aren't really lining up with each other. We want to fix that. So the way we can do that is by going back up, and we've got all of the classes on here already for us. We can just go ahead and copy this whole line of classes down into are col 2. Now they're lining up. We can adjust our padding, our margin up at the top, so that is less of an issue. See, that is still way too big. Let's go down to 300. And now we just need space between those two elements. So we come over to our rating and we say, hey, we don't want margin. We don't want padding. We want margin on the left of 20 px. Okay, apparently a little too much, 10 px. And now we got our refresh button, still not perfectly in line. Apparently, let's go to 75. Looks almost in line. Go down to 250. It's looking pretty good to me. I'm gonna pause there for a moment. I know that was a lot, but hopefully we're getting in that flow of understanding. We get our content showing up, then we go to our CSS and we fiddle with it, and then we go back to our content and add in our IDs, and then we go back to our CSS and we keep fiddling with it. And hopefully what you're seeing here is I gotta fiddle with it. It's not like I've got these values memorized. It's not like I can pull this out from the air. I've done this project, I don't know, 4 or 5 times at this point, and I still have to fiddle with it in order to get it right. That's all part of CSS. Exona, go ahead.
I'm lost.
Okay.
I don't know where I went wrong. Mine does not look anything like that. So I'm just gonna give me a second. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen because I have no idea what I did wrong. Let me see what so this is how it looks. It's in the bottom.
Okay, so first thing I do, you got a double class going on. So we're not allowed to have a class in a class. What you can do, yep, and bring all of that out. So whenever we want to apply multiple classes, take out the closing quote here and the opening quote there.
Closing quote here.
Yep, and then the opening quote on that one. Whenever we want to apply multiple classes to a div, we just separate them with spaces. Okay, apparently that wasn't your only problem. What I think is your problem is scroll over horizontally a little bit. You've got your closing div here, which is really supposed to be down there.
Okay, so just remove this div, copy this div, and it's supposed to be down right here.
I don't know if that's an extra one or not. Save and see what happens. Okay, well, we're on the right track. Let's see, you've got your TVMA, your columns.
I have a border radius of 100.
That is normal. We wanted it to be a perfect circle, so that's why we went all the way up to 100. Let me just see. Oh, but we didn't do that. Oh no, that's right. ID, TVMA, material symbols.
Do I have this bands wrong?
No, take me back to your code or to your browser. Let me, where did my request remote go? Here we go. Not quite sure what you have wrong. TVMA, call 2. I did all of that. You did your TVMA, which I called rating call, and then you did all of that. And then this I did on the rating, which is what you did here. to the inspect tools.
Okay.
So there's your inline flex, your align items center.
If that fixes it, oh my God. So that fixed it? Not
Sure
really?
did.
Wow. Thank you.
No problem.
You gotta be meticulous to be a coder. Every detail counts. Every detail.
I know a lot of beginner programmers are like, it just shouldn't be case sensitive. It shouldn't matter if you type it in an uppercase or a lowercase. The computer should know. And it's like, nope. An uppercase A and a lowercase a are two completely different letters to the computer.
Thank you for your help.
No problem. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Question.
Yes.
You've obviously never seen Bridgerton. Are they playing cricket right there?
I believe so, yes.
That's so heinous.
It plays an even bigger role in season 2. Again, not that I would know.
Could you look at my code for a minute, please?
Yeah, go for it.
Like, I'm just not seeing what's wrong. I can see it, but I can't figure out how to fix it. I'm just having a hard time looking at it and looking at what it should be. And then I'm getting lost. So I have this.
Yeah, so the
problem.
first thing I noticed right off the bat is that this col 5 has all of the info in it, including the button info. But look at where this col 5 ends. We follow that down and it ends right here. So that means all of this button info is supposed to be inside the div right here.
Oops. So that closes that one.
But it shouldn't, right? Because all of those buttons are inside that column. Those buttons are supposed to show up underneath the P tag right there.
Oh, they're supposed to be in column 5.
Mm-hmm.
Move that over.
So scroll all the way down to the bottom of your div and put a closing div right there. You need another one on 91.
Oh, goodness. Okay, at the same level?
Well, if you put it in there and have prettier enabled. Oh, no, we got another issue. Hold on. Let me request remote control. Let me dive in here.
I think you had a duplicate closing div.
No, the problem was right here. You don't have a closing arrow on this div ID button info. So it doesn't know when your divs are over and when they're not. So if we put that in, now we've got our button, we've got our span, but in here, our button is, this button is now empty because you said the button opens, there's nothing in it, and the button closes. And then you close the button down here. All of this stuff is supposed to be inside the button here. Then we keep going down. You open your span tag, you put the class and the ID on it, but you don't have the closing arrow for this span tag.
But isn't it in the red down there?
No, this is the closing tag, but whenever we have an opening arrow, we need a closing arrow. Where's the closing arrow for this opening tag?
Oh gosh, I'm not seeing it.
So we need to put that in right here.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
now if we save that, I don't think we're out of the woods yet.
No.
We got span, opening, closing button. Then we've got opening info. This should just say info, I believe, not info icon. More info. We close the button. Now we close the div, and that's closing the div for our button info. So now we need to close the div for our column, and all of this goes over one level of indentation. And we come back over here, and your buttons are now showing up. So we're on the right track. The columns are in right. Now we've got our opening col 5, but we don't have a closing closing div for that. So when we put that in, that gets our prettier running, and it fixes all of our indentation for us. So all those closing tags are what broke prettier, and why whenever prettier stops working, we need to say stop. Where are our closing tags missing?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was getting lost because I was looking for the closing tag like underneath the content and not thinking I needed one next to it. Okay. Wow. Thank you. I need to do that rainbow extension. All
Well,
right.
it looks like you have it on. That's what this red and green and purple is doing for you.
Yep. There's another one I think I need to do for the
Oh,
divs.
you have it's like rainbow tags and then rainbow something else. And yeah, you probably have one and not the other. Yep.
Right, essentially. Okay. Thanks,
So
Max.
that's a good reminder. So I put 2 extensions in that I know our cohort 3 students found helpful in the week 5 day 1 outline. If you pull that up, there are 2 of them in here. We've already covered prettier. There's indent rainbow. That's what every time you go a level of indentation over, it gives you a little bit more color. If you go into the screenshot, you can see here, it like highlights your lines in different colors. So it makes it easier to visualize the level of indentation. And then the other one in here is called rainbow brackets. Of course, they don't have a screenshot of that, so I can't show you what it does, but that just makes whenever you have parentheses, which we'll be using a lot more in JavaScript, it makes the opening and closing parentheses and curly braces and all of that get highlighted in the same color. And then the final one is rainbow tags, which apparently doesn't exist anymore. Boo. Well, no wonder you didn't have it installed. This is the correct one. I'll fix the link for that. Well, let me zoom in on that. No, it basically changes your divs. So your opening div and your closing div will be highlighted in the same color, which makes it easier to understand what information is enclosed in that div. I will update that link in case you're interested in those. Okay, that link is now fixed. Those extensions are totally optional. They help you, go for it, use them. I personally don't use them, but I know a lot of students do find them helpful, so that's why we throw those out. All right, we're gonna get over the finish line here. We've got our rating showing up. We've got all of our buttons showing up. We've got to bring this puppy home with our content down at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here. We've got to say, hey, this div is going all the way up to the container fluid. We still want to be in the container fluid, but now we are getting to a new section. And that new section is going to have, let's say, an H6 tag on it, That's a header tag, and that is going to say released in the past year. So I save that, I come over to my browser, shows up exactly where I want. Let's see what it looks like as an H5 for shits and giggles. All right, I like that, little bit bigger, but it's right up against my headline, right? So we've got two options. We can, well, more than two. We can either go up to that headline section, put a margin bottom on that and have that push everything down, or we can put an ID on this that says first video row label. Seems like a very wordy selector. And we can put a margin on that at the top of 20px. And now we got a little bit more breathing room there. So we say, okay, also in that section, we're going to have a div class row. And inside that row, we're going to have a bunch of columns. Just do a col2 for spacing now. And then we've got to get our image showing up. So our first image is called show1.jpg. So I do my image, my src. I make sure I put my img/ in there because that's the beginning. That's my image folder. And then I'm going to say show1.jpg. I save it. I come over here. Now that looks like it's working, but it's really outside my column. It's kind of hard to see that until we take this whole column, copy and paste it and say show2. Well, now we can very easily see those shows are on top of each other. What's the easy solution for that?
Cover?
We could do that, but what is the bootstrap class that we can add to fix it?
Flex.
We used it for our logo. How do we get our logo to be contained within inside the column?
Span.
Nope, span is for text.
Okay.
Image fluid, there it is. We're saying, hey, treat this image like a fluid liquid. Make it just spill into the size of the container. So what we can do is a class of img fluid on both of these. And now they're sized properly. So in my mockup, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images, right? So we say 12 divided by 6 gives us our col2. So they're actually the proper size. All I need to do is copy and paste this a couple more times and change my numbers. 4, wow, Max, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I come
Hey,
over
Max,
here.
You
Yeah.
did 5 twice.
4, 5, and 6, and now I've got a broken image over here. Well, that's because Netflix oddly mixes their image types. Some of them are .jpg images, the others are .webp. .webp is an emerging file format that offers better image compression for transmission over the internet. So what that just means is down here, we need to be careful and make it show WebP instead of .jpg. So we come over here and our images are in, and not only are they in, but because we're using image fluid combined with the grid, when we size up the page, it gets bigger and looks like what we expect.
Question, can you still like edit the width, height, and those properties of the image, even though you have
can,
the image fluid?
but it's very ill-advised because whenever you set a static height and width, that means that it will not be responsive on different or smaller device screens. Setting a static, setting both a height and a width is very rarely advised because it will alter the aspect ratio of the image for you. The other reason why it's not advised is the grid system is responsive, right? We've already seen our columns expand based off of the size of the screen. So by using that image fluid, what we're doing is we're allowing the grid system to control the sizing for us. Now, if you wanted to, you could say, hey, on a smaller screen size, only show 3 of these columns instead of 5 of these columns or 6 of these columns. That would make it even more responsive, but I don't want to spoil what's coming down the pipeline for tomorrow and Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Mm,
I noticed a couple things here. When we expanded our screen size out, our refresh and our rating is now kind of floating out there. We can fix that, I hope, by finding that div. And inside of that, if we put a text end on it. Oh, that didn't work because of our flexbox, darn it.
I had to go into the CSS and add to the bottom.
Did you do a text align right, or did you do something different on that?
Contents bottom.
Content bottom. Okay. There should be a bootstrap for that. Get bootstrap. Let's go to the flexbox. And let's find the content bottom. Content end. Justify content end. Justify content end. There we go. That's the same exact thing that you did, Alba. I just did it on the bootstrap side instead of doing it on the CSS side. Exona, go ahead.
mine does not look like that.
The images or the rating?
The images.
Share the screen.
The screen looks crooked.
Yep, you got single quotes instead of closing quotes on your image fluid.
Oh, at the end.
Mhm.
Thanks, that's it. Bye. Okay.
If you guys would like additional practice, go ahead and fill out the rest of those rows. There's one last thing that I want to show you guys tonight, and that's when we start looking at this site and we scale this all the way down. Oop. All of a sudden, our site don't look good no more. Right? And we're like, okay, well, we could invest some time and make this responsive, but that may be something we do at a later date. For now, we're like, hey, we're still learning all these concepts. We're still picking up a lot of this. There will be sites that we make that are not mobile responsive, and that's okay. Wouldn't it be nice if we could throw up some warning that goes, whoa, 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 your screen size is either way too tiny or way too big, and we didn't make the site for that. This is a learning project. We are aware that mobile responsiveness is a thing. We just did not tackle it in this site, at least not yet. So we can actually combine what we've learned with our media queries with a little warning that pops up that says, you know, this is a little too big or a little too small. So we're going to go back to our index.html. I'm going to go all the way down. I'm even going to get outside of my container. And down here, I'm going to do a div with an ID that says screen. We're going to say abnormal screen size. And in there, we are going to do an H1 that says, whoa, your screen is either really big or really small. And then underneath that, we can do a little p tag that says this site was designed for Goldilocks sized monitors or Goldilocks size screens.
That's the wrong type of viewer.
Thank you.
I would have lost sleep over that.
Understandable. Would bother me as well if I had a little bit more energy.
Goldilocks is also misspelled.
Is that right? Now that just looks wrong. Goldilocks. Now I got that right. Okay. So I save that. I come back over to my screen and it's there. And I'm like, well, no, this is an okay screen size. I don't want that to show up. So what I'm able to do is with some CSS magic and our media queries, we're able to get that to display. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, hey, grab my media. The media is where my screen is showing up. That is going to have a target only the screen when the max width is greater is 450 pixels or the min width is 1400 pixels, i.e. when the screen is huge or it's tiny. And I missed I gotta look this up every time. Media query CSS. I missed only screen and that's what I missed. So now when the screen sizes are that big, grab the abnormal screen size, put that as a display flex and put it in the center of the screen. Come to your questions in a second. Once I get this working, I will circle back to you guys. So I go back to my max flex and I save, and it's still there. That's because this CSS only is getting applied when my screen is either under 450 pixels or over 1400 pixels. So what I need to do is say by default, don't display my message. Now I come back over here, my message is gone, but if I shrink that all the way down, I get, whoa, your screen size is either really big or really small. And if I bring that back out, it will disappear. But we want something a little bit more obnoxious, right? We want something that's going to display and kind of hide everything back here. Well, all of that stuff is in my container fluid. So I can say my container fluid is going to display none if it's in these screen sizes. So I come over here, I get the message, but when I expand that out, I'm able to get my content back until I get really big, and then I get that message again. And if I bring it right back in, I get it showing up. This is just an example. Obviously, we could do a lot more styling here, and this is an extreme. When you're designing a website for someone, 9 times out of 10, you would rather let them see the website in desktop mode than lock them out of it altogether. But as this is potentially a portfolio project, we like to give you guys this option to say, hey, if you're reviewing this and you're thinking, let's see if they've done responsive, this is kind of the nuclear extreme option to be able to say, hey, your screen size has to be in these ranges in order to test out this project. Schneider, go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
my question was gonna be, are we gonna like use keyframes for like the animation on the images, or is that like not a thing? Unless I'm
You
using
could.
keyframe wrong.
I don't know if Netflix.com does that, but you are more than welcome to give it a try.
Okay, okay.
Artrell, go ahead.
When you
Oh, and
did,
Schneider, don't limit yourself to opacity. You could also do a margin top to make the images kind of feel like they're gliding in as well.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Now go ahead, Artrell.
when you did the styling for maximum width just now, does it matter in which order you do the numbers?
It does not.
Okay, that's why I was confused. You put max width of 650, but the minimum width was a larger number, so I was just confused.
Well, it matters. You could switch min width 1400 and max width 650, but the 650 has to go to the maximum width. So what we're saying is this styling only applies when the width is 650 or lower. So the maximum width of the screen can be 650 pixels. If it's 630 pixels, that's below the maximum of 650. So this styling is going to apply to it. If the width of the window is 660 pixels, it is above the maximum, and therefore that styling is not going to apply.
Okay, so 650 and less, or 1400 and bigger.
Correct.
Got it. So anything between 651 and 1399 is acceptable, and the message will not appear.
Correct. Because by default, this display none will be in there. So that is making the message disappear. But if the window is below the maximum of 650 pixels or above the minimum of 1400 pixels, then we set the display to show.
Okay.
And we could even get a little fancy in here and say the height on this should be 100 VH. And then we can say flex direction row column. And now we get a little bit nicer error message. And then we could also do a text align center. That H1. Oh, there we go. So with a little bit of flex work, we can actually make that, and we could even throw, I don't know, some padding on there of 20px. Make that error message a little bit prettier and cleaned up. But all of this flex direction and the height, the align items and the justify content, we could do that either with Bootstrap, which I didn't do, or we could go the Flexbox Froggy route and apply that CSS directly ourselves. I promise you guys we're going to end early tonight. I broke said promise. Let's get to the terms, and then I will stick around to help anyone review where we are at here before we call it a night. Okay, going to the week 5, day 2 outline. What terms did we use tonight? What phrases, what concepts, what do we want to capture for our notes?
The padding. The right, bottom left. I'm sorry, top right, bottom left.
That shorthand works for most CSS properties that take 4 values, by the way. So you could also do that with margin. If you wanted your margin to be different all the way around the box model, you can start with the top, go right, bottom, and then left. What else?
We explored the opacity element.
What else?
Tag shadow. Different fonts. The media screen.
Image fluid?
I think we have image fluid in last night's outline.
Okay.
Maybe this is just me, but I learned that border radius is rounding the edges.
Caitlin called me out tonight on the text spacing property when I just put spaces between everything. And I'm like, I don't remember what it's called. It's some stupid name. She was like, I'm pretty sure it's literally called letter spacing. And I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it is actually just called letter spacing in CSS. And then sent her some complicated kerning principle of fonts instead.
I can't stop laughing at that word. Don't say that word.
You showed us the Emmet shortcuts, or like the .div.
Using a shortcut language called Emmet. Anything else for tonight?
I do need help with my code, but
Okay.
I'm gonna sit on after.
We can call class here a full 3 minutes early. Hopefully giving you back 3 minutes that I've taken from you on other nights. I will certainly stick around and help with code. And if you need to go in a breakout room, I'm not sure if Caitlin can stay on for a couple minutes and help as well. Cool. But if you are all set and good to go, you're probably not going to miss anything. But if you would like to stick on and see where other students got stuck, you are more than welcome to as well. I will stop the recording here. And everyone have an awesome evening. I will see you